What up, people, and welcome to Lanepod, City of Lane's 10 to 15 minutes weekly podcast focused on MBA admission and experience for motivated Africans. Whether you're an MBA enthusiast, an applicant, an admit, a student, an alum, this is the show for you. I'm Samuel, your host, and I'm excited about today's episode. But in case you haven't noticed, last week we started to pivot to topics that apply to all stages of the MBA journey. In that last episode, we zoomed in on how to navigate any delays you may experience along the way. So whether that's an admission, an MBA program turns you down that you really want to go to, or you didn't even get admitted at all, or that you tried to apply for an internship or a full-time job and you were disappointed and all of your plans were built on them saying yes to you. That episode is very, very applicable to you. It's one of the many series of MBA, or podcast rather, that will transcend wherever it is you are in your MBA journey. In today's episode, and like I said, for the next few ones, we'll continue that trend of discussing topics that is applicable irrespective of where you are in your MBA journey. And what are we talking about today? Today's topic is multicultural curiosity, the power of silent observation. It sounds fancy, doesn't it? Yeah. Think about that for a moment. Okay, so maybe we start by laying off the situation a little bit. The truly talented but underprivileged African will be interacting with a deeply multicultural community for the first time during the MBA. Like you walked all your life in Africa, yeah, maybe there's some interaction online with, colleagues from other parts of the world, or some are visiting, but they're still doing it within the context of your own culture. Your culture remains the dominant portion of your work life. At the end of the day, your MBA program would be the very first time where you are taken out of context and put in a new environment. In such situations where everyone is new to one another and everything else, the tendency to want to belong often drives suboptimal behaviors, such as being overexcited. Like, okay, who's this bush person that has just arrived from Nigeria? Or logorrhea, which is, the excessive and often incoherent talkativeness or wordiness. Like you just speak, another word for it is actually spitballing. You're oversharing, you're overtrusting, you're saying things out of context, you're sounding stupid, to say the least. That's all that are suboptimal behaviors that do you a great disservice in shaping other people's perception about you. The problem is that more often than not, just because of all these actions, you become prisoners to your own words. You create impressions about you that is really not the truth, but because that's what you projected, people start to see you that way, and you begin to be boxed into a corner that you don't want to be. The question then arises, how do you avoid falling into the pitfall, and how do you even recover from it? And that's what we're going to cover into this episode. There are four broad things that you need to do, and sometimes it needs to be done in this order. 1, be present to the world around you. 2, actively leave the comfort of familiarity. 3, offer questions, not opinions. And 4, reflect and adapt. And we'll break it down one after the other. Now let's start with being present to the world around you. This is by far the most important step, as it involves prioritizing yourself less and your environment more. It requires you to fully immerse yourself, your mind, and curiosity in the environment, not by making statements, but by paying attention to the details, the people, the environment, the interactions, the gestures, the facial expressions, and all that. It is seeing and listening, not speaking and hearing. The reason why this is important is you cannot interpret what you haven't first assimilated. What hasn't even come to your consciousness, you can't begin to digest. And the whole point is to be present, to start to take things into your consciousness that may be somewhat absent in your environment, or sometimes in the background in your environment. Some call this self-awareness, but I think it's much more than that. Self-awareness involves you paying attention to how you interact with the environment. This is not paying attention to yourself, because yourself is in the background. You're not doing anything except for observing. Yes, there's an element of watching how you observe. Like, you don't, look at people up until the point where they become uncomfortable, but you do it in such a way that you're in a background. I prefer saying being present, because, it takes the focus or spotlight off you and places it outward in the environment that you belong to. So, the key things, you may ask the question, so what are the key things to spotlight as I try to be present in the environment around you? One, cultural norms. How do locals interact? How do they greet each other? What's their conversational style? What phrases do they use? What's the seating arrangement? Personal space preference, unspoken rules and power dynamics that may be going on within locals. Again, remember I said locals. Also pay attention to the new guys as well. Like, they're going to exhibit properties and attributes that you would have exhibited if you had not listened to this podcast. So it allows you to perceive how you would have been perceived if all you wanted to do as soon as you got to that new MBA program or that new job or that new location, and all you want to do is show yourself and let everyone know that you've arrived. No, that's not the way to go. So that's one. We've talked about cultural norms. Two, nonverbal cues: eye contact, hand and body movement, facial expressions, gestures, posture, and how they change from person to person, or from locals to non-locals, or groups to groups. All that social network, an intricate network, and interdependency needs to be observed. You have to think like a archaeologist, not an archaeologist. Like, it's a study of people. I forget the word, but the point I'm making is there's a field of study that involves studying the social context, that you go into a living and current society and community and you observe them. It starts with an A. It's related to archaeology, but somehow I cannot remember, the name. But anyways, the third one is verbal communication. Watch out for expressions, the tone, the pace, the volume of conversation, as well as names. People don't pay attention to other people's names, and you'll be shocked at how much people would love that their names are remembered. So that's one. Be present to the world around you. Two, avoid the comfort of familiarity, and do so actively. It's only natural to want to mingle only with the people that look like you. Actively work against this natural instinct, as it will prevent you, if you do not work against it, it will prevent you from mentally leaving your cultural society. There's a way to leave Nigeria, but, still be in Nigeria. You know what I mean? Like, when you go into the grocery store and you're trying to convert your currency from the US dollar to Nigerian naira, and you're trying, this is too expensive. Like, it would have only costed me 1,000 naira in Nigeria. Now it's costing me about 10,000 naira. Yes, you've mentally not left Nigeria. The ability to actively leave your home country back in your home country effectively enables you to be present in the new world. If you don't, it inhibits you from immersing yourself in the new world. You often see folks who have left Nigeria or Botswana, but Botswana never left them, right? They have not integrated or blended with their new environment. And after 20 years, you take them back to Nigeria and you bring them back, you're never going to be able to tell that they've lived in Canada for 20 years or in the US for 20 years, or wherever it is that you're going, right? You do not want to be like them. They stand out as sore thumb. They have a target placed at their back, and they effectively alienating themselves. You do not want to do that. Avoid flocking. Don't make enemies out of your black folks or the people you came from the same country with. No. Instead, invest in first understanding your environment and making sure that comes first and foremost. You don't have to alienate anyone. There's smart ways to go about it. You're invited to certain events constantly when you could be, in a group of more multicultural, diverse community. Humbly and just nicely decline. Number 3, offer questions, not opinions. And there are layers to this. One is interpreting what you're seeing and communicate, and the other is communicating your opinion. So let's break down. Let's start with the first one. You may not be able to fully interpret what you're observing for what they are. It's not enough to know what or how, but also why. Like, you observe a behavior. You don't want to draw your own conclusions, because the mistake most make, and this often leads to a display of foolishness, is to pass judgment on what they have not fully understood. And this is where questions are important. Ask a local, but show curiosity. You can start off first, admit you may be asking the wrong question or the right one the wrong way. Ask them to help you rephrase it within social context. So an example of this is, look, this is what I'm observing. Now, I'm sure I may not be asking the right question, or I may be asking the right question the wrong way, but please pardon me, I come from a different society and I'm only just trying to understand what's going on here. So feel free to interject and let me know how to think about it or how to ask the question. That way, you're humbly just bringing them and say, look, I may say something stupid, but forgive me because I come from a different environment. And most people are never going to judge you for the questions that you ask. Observation is useless without the right interpretation or multitude of interpretation. So 1, admit you may be asking the wrong question or the right one in the wrong way. Take it a step further and ask about nuances. And this process of doing this often helps you make genuine connection with the people you're asking questions from. So, like taking it a step further and asking for nuances. Say, okay, now thank you for explaining that to me. Are there any other related questions that I could be asking, or any related issues that you could shed more light in, or nuances that I may not be aware of? Again, you're not just staying within that one pointed question. You're asking them to help you think about all the surrounding issues around that one issue that you've identified. And you're essentially broadening your horizon. The second layer is, when you have to communicate your opinion. I cannot be prescriptive as to, when to speak and when to be silent. Context will differ. But when you have to speak because you're prompted to, or you strongly believe you have value to add, frame your point of view as a question. And here's how you do it. 4 steps. 1, acknowledge that your thought may differ and it's shaped by the environment that you grew up in, and that you're well aware that there are equally other views out there. Once you state that up front, state it. Don't assume people know. Don't assume because you're black people know you're coming from a different environment. Well, state your opinion then, and then close by drawing others back into the conversation by asking them for their thoughts, or throw back the same question to them. Like, yeah, I mean, this is what I think about it. What do you think? Or what are some of the things that this is raising in your mind? Involve them, draw them back into the conversation. Let them know you're not trying to take, oh, this is all I have to say, and then you have to take it or leave it. No, you're drawing them in. And as you continue to pay attention to what is going on within you and around you, you start to see that you're assimilating a lot of them. And this takes us to step 4, which is reflect and adapt. After observing and asking questions, take the time to reflect on what you have noticed and what you have heard, and how it is shaping within and what's going on within you. It's very important in growing and adapting to your new environment that you also put the spotlight back inwards and ask yourself, how is this shaping my thinking? For instance, you could observe that people would rather shake hands than hug. Or in certain contexts, they'll rather wave than either shake hands or hug. Reflection allows you to internalize this and then mirror it back. You may come from a society where everyone is hugging. You don't just come into it and then try that. That's personal space that there's someone else's personal space you're violating. And there are a number of ways to reflect. 1, you can speak out aloud to yourself. Hey, Sam, this is what I'm observing. You're talking to yourself. You're soliloquizing. You can journal. You can exchange notes with other people from your prior or regional environment who may have been here longer or who are equally paying attention to the environment, and see how they're interpreting things around you. So as I wrap up, remember, be present in the new world around you. 2, actively leave the comfort of familiarity. 3, offer questions, not opinion. 4, reflect and adapt. leverage the power of silent observation. And the whole point of silent observation is to use it to adapt your behavior in a way that is respectful and appropriate in that new environment you now belong to. It is not to judge or stereotype. It's about gaining a deeper appreciation for the diversity around you. Thank you for listening to today's episode. And if you'd like to ask a question or learn more about Lane, links and descriptions are in the show note. You could just Google or look for us wherever it is you get your news, and you'll find City of Lane there. See you in the next episode, and bye for now.